So I was just thinking. Hi, and welcome to I Was Just Thinking, a podcast for creatives all around and people who just want to make and not feel shit about it. Can't believe that's become a tagline for this, maybe. Today's episode is about how I deal with imposter syndrome after years and years of being a performer and being in the creative industries and doing a lot of things. And I must say I am not someone who has all the answers for this, because if anything, imposter syndrome is one of the things that I feel the most insecure about. Like I experience imposter syndrome so much. And I watched this reel, I think, with Iona Mahler, the American rugby player. And she said in one reel that she doesn't experience imposter syndrome. And I was just like, I did not know that exists. Like in my reality, I didn't know that there's people who doesn't feel imposter syndrome. And it made me realize that, wow, it must be, because that if that's my reality, that I don't even see a world without it, I must feel a lot of it. But yeah, I do feel a lot of it. Let's go to my pointers. So my first pointer is imposter syndrome thrives in silence. It's often about feeling disconnected, not just from others, but from your progress. Naming it helps loosen its grip. Yeah, and I think that silence is exactly what I was talking about, is that I haven't realized that how much imposter syndrome I experience. I didn't realize. I just thought maybe it was like normal anxiety or fear, but all of those are imposter syndrome. And ironically, it just shows how much like unconscious we are about certain feelings, because I picked one of the most hardest industries to be as a woman. So I literally almost like chose to fight against imposter syndrome every single day, because like 2.6% of the music producers in the world are women. So I went to this like really male dominated area as someone who is a minority. And I was very aware that I was a minority, but it came from that like need to prove myself, need to prove everybody wrong about me and prove that I can do something, I can be part of this. Until like recent years, I've kind of, after going to therapy a lot, I've started to realize that obviously all of that is very consuming and very big weight on my shoulders. There's a lot of reasons why I do that, and I'm not going to go to that because that's too personal. But part of it is like imposter syndrome. It's feeling like a minority. It is feeling like I don't belong here. I shouldn't be here. But then same time wanting to be there. If that makes sense, like it's almost a reverse psychology in a way. And it's not always self-doubt. It's sometimes self-protection. Believing you're a fraud can stop you from risking rejection. The brain is trying to keep you emotionally safe. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Is sometimes you kind of put yourself into the position where you know you're going to struggle, and sometimes you're avoiding every single way the position of struggling because you know it's gonna hurt, or you feel like it's gonna hurt, so your brain is protecting itself. Recent years, I think the most I felt insecure or like an imposter is about this creative confidence thing and starting this like Liina things, TikTok and Instagram, and then this podcast. And I think one reason is because when I started music production tutorials on YouTube, I worked really hard, because I was a minority, to show everybody that I can do it. And because of that, I gained a lot of confidence and credit to feel like I'm not an imposter. I was working really hard to I overperformed, basically. I read the whole Ableton Live manual, which is the program that we use to make music. I read it from start to finish. I learned every single update, every single detail. I became an Ableton certified trainer. I got, my master's in music production. I was the lecturer in a university, and all those credits and all that knowledge started to make me believe that I deserved to be in that space, even though in the beginning, obviously, I was still struggling with it. But I never consciously felt the fear in that, because my fight to be in that area was so strong. Whereas with creative confidence stuff and coaching, I don't have a degree in psychology. I don't have a degree in coaching or any kind of thing really around this area. And when I feel imposter about it, I forget that I've written a book about this topic. I've literally spent 5 years of studying creative confidence and everything, but because it's not like a degree or like this a systematic like a school or some kind of system that would give me the recognition that now you are allowed to talk about these topics. Now you are allowed to have private coaching sessions with people. Because I don't have that, I feel like I'm not allowed to do it. And I don't know, it's possibly very much because I was brought up in Finland, and in Finland, it's a very education-centered country, because education is free, so it's very competitive to get into schools, and where you've graduated has a lot of weight. What kind of degree you have has a lot of weight to your position socially, I feel. It's different than in UK. But because I was grown there, it's so ingrained to me that you need to have something to back up your information, which in a way is a good thing. And it makes sure in this society that there's not a lot of wrong information being shared. But same time, it's very exhausting, because that fear became so big that then I didn't want to do this podcast, and I kind of kept on pushing it for many, many, many times and many years. Okay, another pointer. Imposter syndrome isn't a beginner's problem. It can grow the more visible you become, especially when your work doesn't feel like it matches how others see you. Yeah. I think that when we talk about creative confidence, often we assume that it's only about beginners. But actually, I do feel like there is a valid conversation to be had how much it almost can grow with a career. Grow with the more that you're in it, the more you feel pressures around it. It's interesting right now what's happening in my head. I'm talking about all of this, and I have my pointers and I have my experiences, and I feel very strongly, and I feel like it's been such a strong presence in my life. But right now I'm almost thinking should I stop this episode and start and find another topic, because I don't feel qualified enough to talk about it. That's literally in my head right now. I just caught it. I just caught myself thinking that I started to panic in my head and spiral, feeling that this is not interesting enough for you. This is not quality enough for this podcast, where the whole freaking podcast idea is that I'm just myself and I'm just reflecting about things. And maybe because I don't, somehow right now my brain is not like processing enough about information, like but part of dyslexia is that I have a very bad memory when it comes to certain things. So example, because it's a processing, information processing way. So I process information differently than neurotypical people do. And I started to now in my mind started to go back to like, oh shit, like I should have read the chapter about imposter syndrome before I started to do this episode. Because then I would have had more concrete, interesting information for you to give so that I come across more like a professional, so that this is literally imposter syndrome happening in front of your eyes. Oh my God. So let's see how I can continue from this so that I'm not, I guess now I need to remember what the point of this podcast is. And I need to remember that I'm in no way I have ever told anyone that I am an expert psychologist or anything ever. So I don't owe that up for anyone. I don't owe it to you. I don't owe it to myself to know that. I'm proud of myself that I caught that moment. And I need to remind myself that I am good enough, that it's okay. And the whole point, and where imposter syndrome comes from, is the feeling that I'm going to let you down. I'm an embarrassment. So there's a lot of fear there. There's a fear that people are not going to listen to this podcast if it's too messy, if it's too boring. So I guess there's a lot of feeling that I'm not enough as I am. There's a panic about my dyslexia and neurodiversity that it confuses me sometimes, and it's a lot to take in, and I feel overwhelmed, and I guess I got a little bit anxiety around that. So I'm currently trying to tell myself that it is okay. This is a self-hug. That's fine. It's okay that I'm feeling imposter syndrome while recording a podcast about imposter syndrome. Do you know what? Let's take one of your letters in so that it's a good segue to whatever we're going to talk about next. So I got this a couple of days ago. Hi, Liina. I've been listening to your podcast and I just wanted to say thank you. So much of what you talk about touches on things I've never really been able to explain, especially the feeling of never being real enough. I'm a dancer and a choreographer, but most days I feel like I'm just playing the part. Like if someone looks too closely, they'd realize I have no idea what I'm doing. Even when people compliment my work, I feel like they just don't see how flawed it really is. It's exhausting always feeling like I'm pretending. Hearing you speak so honestly makes it a little easier to keep going. Warmly, Mila. Oh. That's actually quite like validating for me to hear currently. Validation is, by the way, a weird word because like every time I talk about the word validation on social media, people kind of have different perceptions for it. So when I use validation as a word, I mean the act of noticing someone, the act of feeling heard, the act of feeling seen and being present. You don't need to agree to other people's opinions. You don't need to agree or make them feel like everything that you're saying is true, but it's the act of feeling just heard. So I just wanted to clarify that when I talk about validation, that's what I talk about, is being seen and heard. making other people being seen and make me feeling like I'm being seen. Like if someone looked too closely, they realize that I have no idea what I'm doing. That's exactly what I was saying earlier, is that if someone looks really closely at this, I don't think you need to look too closely to realize that I feel like that even now I'm minimizing myself, because I actually do know, like if you think about it, I've written a whole freaking book about this, and my hobby is reading psychology, and I actually do know about these things. I know about psychological concepts, and I've written a book about this. So Liina, now, don't minimize yourself. But this is why I feel, that's why that letter really hit me, is because it's so exhausting to feel this all the time. What I feel like it has helped is having, when I go to the spiral of feeling like I'm not good enough and I'm not knowledgeable enough and I just know enough, I have a husband next to me who I'm just really, okay, now I'm starting to cry. I feel that he has a way to be able to see me and remind me that I am enough, but he reminds me of why I started things in the first place. So for example, this podcast. He reminds me why I'm doing it if I feel like I'm too scared to continue, or I feel like it's why am I even doing it because nobody listens to it, or I'm not knowledgeable enough, or so on. And he reminds me that I do it because it's something that makes me happy, and it's something that gives me a lot, because I like talking about this stuff and it brings me a lot of happiness, and the fact that I can hear from other people that it makes them happy. That's why I'm doing it. He reminds me of that. But he also reminds me that those fears that I am feeling shouldn't define me. There's different ways that you can do that, but it's almost like my spiral, I need to stop that. I need to stop the spiral before it gets too bad. And sometimes I can do it for myself to stop the spiral, but it does help to have somebody next to you who truly believes in you and who just wants to see you being happy. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have for something like imposter syndrome, which is based on fear, is that you have someone next to you who enhances that fear. So they put their fears on you, or they don't remind you of the things that make you happy, but they make you feel like something is expected from you. Like, example, that maybe you should have a degree in psychology to start this kind of podcast, or maybe you should know more, or maybe you should prepare better and edit every single episode and do all those things. So those are their picture of that's how they would do this podcast. That's how they would approach it. But we need someone who reminds you of how you want to approach it. That it's okay. The way that you want to do things is okay. And it's as right. There's no right or wrong way to do creativity. My way to do this is as right as someone who wants to prepare every single word that they say, who wants to edit it. And I think that is so tricky for many people, because when we start, well, for some people's brains, example, preparing every single sentence and every single script works really well. For me, it doesn't work because it makes me feel so tense, and it makes me feel like I'm going to fail straight away. Because as a dyslexic person, I can't I literally just can't read a script and read it to the camera. It makes me, I can't take in what I'm saying while I'm trying to focus to say the correct words. Like when I read these letters here, I always read them almost a couple times, or I have a little break between to kind of process what I just said. But I can have a script. It just doesn't work for my brain. So that's why I need to do this as a free flow thing. That's why my point is that if you have someone next to you who sees that and embraces that that is how you need to do things, then they need to keep on reminding you that that's okay. You're not doing it wrong. But be aware of people who don't see you and your qualities, but they put their fears and their qualities and how they would think as the right way to do things on you. That's not how you do it. That's how they do it. Okay. Let's get a pointer. I need to get some water first. My pointers. Confidence isn't Confidence isn't a permanent state. It's something you rebuild, episode by episode. Feeling like a fraud doesn't mean you are one. It means you are growing. Okay, now I'm again thinking. I'm trying to process that. Because in my head, I need to visualize what I read. Because every thought needs to be visualized in my head. Otherwise, I don't understand it, or it doesn't go through. Dyslexia is that for me. It's not a permanent state. Confidence is not like, as a person, I've been hearing this a lot since I was a kid, that people perceive me as quite confident because I am someone who still does things at my projects, even if I'm afraid. I have accepted this, but this comes from my mom. She's an artist and she does a lot of projects. And I've seen that me and my brothers, we all have adapted this, is that every time we feel afraid or we feel upset, my mom's response was and is, that's okay. Like, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be sad. If I was crying, she said, come on, cry more. Let's cry. Like, it's almost like I felt very much like if I was afraid to do something, it was okay to do it afraid. It was okay to feel afraid. It was okay to cry. It was okay to feel emotions. I still do sometimes rationalize my emotions a lot more than I actually feel them. So, but at the same time, I clearly have started to accept from young age that confidence is not a permanent state. Confidence is not something that you reach. It's something that comes from balance of things. And I don't feel every day, I don't feel confident. I don't feel like I can do things. But confidence is, you can put it into three parts. It's not one thing, but there's actually subcategories for confidence. There's self-efficacy, self-esteem, and self-confidence, I think. Self-worth. I can't remember what the third was. But there's this idea is that one of them is how you feel about yourself right now, how you feel about yourself if you can do something in the future, and how do you feel then about your capabilities of doing something. And those can vary of how you feel about certain projects. So example, for me, I usually do have a certain belief that everything will be okay in the end. So in the future, I have quite optimistic picture generally about the future. And I don't mind getting disappointed. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, well, I don't want to expect anything good from the future because it's better to prepare so that you don't get disappointed. But I accept that it's okay to be disappointed, because to get anywhere, you need to get disappointed quite many times. Because failure, I don't want to be afraid of failure. I don't want to think that it is failure. Because if I try a lot of things, it just means that I've tried. It means that I'm grown. But something that I personally do struggle with is the idea of sometimes, like, example, my hormones. I have PCOS, which is a hormonal dysfunctional. It's like a chronic hormonal situation where my hormones just go up and down like a lot. So I could have 2 weeks of feeling absolutely shit for 2 weeks, and I can't do anything about it. All I can do is exercise and eat well, and that can make it a little bit better. But it's part of my body. It's part of how I was made, and it's something that I have really started to try to get comfortable with, is that hormones will affect how I feel, how confident I feel. So it's really tough when you want to do a lot of projects and when you're an artist, but your hormones are saying that you are shit and you are ugly and everything's bad. But I guess I really struggle still sometimes to accept that the hormones do affect me. And people who don't have hormonal disorders still have big emotions. But yeah, our emotions go like this. That will affect confidence. Confidence is not a stable thing, but it comes from balance. It comes from understanding that we have moments where we don't feel confident. We have moments where we do feel confident. And then we just live with that and do it anyway. That's straight away my head was like, that did not sound professional and that did not sound good. And I'm like, do you know what? This episode, we're just going with it, and I don't feel confident about this, but I'm still keeping rolling, and I'm going to publish and put this online, and you might listen to it, you might not. Okay, let's wrap this up with a pointer. The most grounded creatives are rarely the most confident. They're the most consistent. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. Repetition builds a sense of I belong here even when your mind says otherwise. And that's literally what I was saying. I'm still recording this. I'm still doing this. I want to put it out on every single Wednesday until the end of the season. So I'm being consistent even if I don't feel confident with it. So here we go. You're welcome. Send me letters at Liina Thinks at Instagram or TikTok. And thank you so much for listening to this most professional podcast in the world. Okay, bye.